Hi, I'm Aaron, and today I am going to make hamburger buns and hot dog buns. So first, we're going to start with a little bit of yeast. This is fresh yeast. It's about a ½ ounce of yeast there. I don't like to use a whole lot of yeast because you just don't need it. Second, I'm going to use some hot tap water. So this is about 2½ cups of hot tap water. So I'm going to incorporate all that together, get it nice and stirred in. Okay, so that's nice and stirred in. The next ingredient I'm going to use is about a tablespoon of brown sugar. I like to use brown sugar. I find that it doesn't add a whole lot of sweetness like a corn syrup. It doesn't add any extra moisture like a honey would, and it doesn't change the flavor. I'm also going to add about 1 tablespoon of salt. It's not science. And then I'm going to start to add my flour in. I'm going to start by adding 2½ cups of flour. So with this recipe is a no-knead or low-knead recipe. So I'm just going to stir it in enough to make a dough ball, and then I'm going to let it sit overnight. So this does take about 14 hours of a rest period to get it to raise to where I want to. So I'm going to get this really incorporated in there. So this is still pretty sloppy here, so I'm going to add another 2 cups in there. I'm going to make lots of buns. We're going to go camping, and we're going to use some for hamburgers, and we're going to use some for hot dogs. So we can learn how to make hamburger and hot dog buns tomorrow. So I'm also going to use a little bit of olive oil. Alright, so this is... So I use fresh yeast versus dried powder yeast. Like the way that it acts better. I like the way that it tastes a lot better. So I find that dry yeast just gives you that, I don't know what kind of flavor, but I also don't use very much yeast. So I'd rather give my dough time to react to the yeast than to force it with a whole bunch of kneading and a whole bunch of yeast. So, but that's completely up to you. I mean, if you want to, you could take this recipe, you could double the yeast, and you could knead it for 10 to 15 minutes, or if you have a KitchenAid mixer with the dough hook, by all means you could throw it in there. But I just really like the way that the end result in the crumb is going to turn out when I don't knead it. The time that it takes to develop the gluten versus forcing glutens, I feel like it's a little bit of more natural gluten. So I'm also using a high gluten flour. So I know that you can get some bread flour and add gluten to it, or if you have access to a restaurant supply store, I would definitely suggest getting either a local high protein flour, or sometimes they call it pizza flour, has high protein in it. I use Pendleton power flour, and I get consistently fantastic results from those flours. So, but whatever you choose to use, I'm sure your results are going to be fabulous, because who doesn't like fresh baked buns? Alright, so you just kind of leave it be shaggy. You know, it's still pretty sticky wet. There's if you don't leave it to be a little wet and sticky, you're gonna get a much tighter crumb. So if you don't like air bubbles in your your buns or in your bread. Add some more flour. All right, there you go. Here is the dough, and we'll check it out once it's risen in 14 hours.